The comparison amateur versus pro is something that's been around for a long time, particularly here on YouTube. But is it really a fair comparison? And are pros really better than amateurs? Let me show you what I mean.
So today's trail takes me right along this absolutely raging river, and I just want you to experience the sound. I could barely hear myself talk over the top of it, but because I also want you to be able to hear me, thanks to the magic of DaVinci Resolve, I'm sure that sounds completely natural. So over the last couple of days in Wales, we've had some very, very heavy rain, which obviously means that the rivers are in full flow. And that's not actually what I've come here for today. I have been to this location for the waterfalls before, because they are absolutely beautiful. But I came here specifically because it's been so rainy that the forest is almost breathing with mist. And I've been searching for mist in forest for so long, but as you can see, where I am currently, there isn't any. So I'm climbing higher in the hopes that we can catch some mist, because I've got a little bit of a confession. You see, the confession I have is that I actually really love doing photography in the woods in the rain. Not because the photography is that much better, because while rain can be very good for photography, it gives the leaves sort of a luscious colour. I just love spending time in the woods in the rain. And that's initially why I took up photography in the first place. I never intended to go pro. That wasn't ever what I wanted to do. I was doing it because I wanted a good reason to spend more time outdoors. And while I was an amateur, it really was all about the good photography.
Now, the word amateur gets bandied around a lot on YouTube, and it's almost inherently seen as a bad thing. A pro, on the other hand, is somebody who's seen as this thing to aspire to. But is that really what these two words represent? If you look at what a pro actually means, it's somebody who does something for money. So if you earn money from taking photos, then you are by definition a pro. But does that mean you take good photos?
So as I was walking along this bridge here, I noticed this beautiful scene, just caught my eye. It's very, very simple. Behind me here, we've got this river flowing really quickly behind me. And there's like an arch of trees and a little bit of mist in the canopy. And sorry to all the people who watch my channel for the Canon 250D, but I don't want to risk getting out in this rain. So I am using my Lumix S5. I'm going super simple with this composition. We're going 60mm so we can crop out the edge of this bridge here, because I want it to be quite low so we don't get too much of the sky in. I'm going for an ever so slightly long exposure. Because this water is very fast moving and very brown and dirty, it really doesn't look good at all if you catch it quickly. But with an ever so slightly long exposure of 1 second, you get a lovely dreamy look that really matches the mist that's in the canopy. And I think the result is actually a pretty nice picture.
These days, it seems the word pro has been more linked with somebody that's good at something, particularly in the world of photography. A pro photographer is generally thought of as somebody who's good at photography. This isn't necessarily true though. Somebody who can just take a correctly exposed image and then sell it, even if it's for a cheap price, well, by definition, that is a pro photographer. That doesn't necessarily mean they're good though.
I do love a bit of mist. It just adds that you need.
An amateur, on the other hand, is linked with somebody that's not particularly good at taking photos. And in my opinion, that's quite a harmful stigma to place on that group of people. By thinking of amateurs as inherently bad, then you're stigmatizing a whole segment of photographers who in themselves are actually very capable, even very good photographers at times as well.
So I've talked before when I've talked about woodland photography to look for characters. Well, here we certainly have an epic character. This overhanging tree that just seems to be held up by the sheer strength of its roots instantly caught my eye as soon as I walked down here. We've got a lovely carpet of orange leaves. And what I wouldn't give some mist right now. I think we're not going to get any more today. It's a bit late in the morning now, but I am logging this location to come back because to create a bit of separation here, I think this would be an absolute beauty of a spot. And before anybody says anything in the comments, there's nothing wrong with having your center column up in your tripod because it's much, much better than trying to do it handheld. Just be very careful when you are using it that you don't shake your camera and it'll come out absolutely fine. I promise you.
So what's the solution to this problem then? Well, if I'm honest, I don't know if there is one. I'm just one man. I can't lobby for change. And if I'm completely honest, the title Amateur versus Pro makes for a very clickable title, particularly here on YouTube. It really does work for clicks. And I do get paid to do photography. I'm in a very fortunate position to do that. So in a real definition, I am a pro photographer. And I'm also quietly confident that I'm a good photographer as well. Not through any natural skill, just simply through years and years of hard work and years of being a very bad photographer beforehand.
So I hope you can hear me over this torrent of water. There's an absolute beast of a river here coming around this corner, and it's leading once again to a beautiful scene. This one is a bit more autumnal. It's very similar to the photo at the bridge that I took earlier, where there's like an archway over the river, but these trees have started to turn already. So we've got lovely yellow, golden colours in there, and a bit of orange too. And that's what I was hoping for today. I'm still a little bit early for the autumn colours, almost like creating a set out of these photos. I wasn't expecting that today. It's always nice when a plan comes together.
Now, I'm not so sure I like that photo. There's just too much white in the top. It really distracts the eye of the viewer. And personally, I don't think that's a very good photo. But a long time ago on this channel, I promised that I would keep showing my bad photos as well as my good ones, because I feel you can learn just as much from them as you can from the good ones and what's good about a photo. It's also important sometimes to see what's bad about a photo. And that big white patch is a bad element. It's distracting, it adds nothing to the picture. There's something to take away. By the way, I quite often share these little tips and tricks for photography, so if that's your sort of thing, then feel free to subscribe and follow along. I would love to have you along.
Now, the vast majority of professional photographers that I know are very, very good people. They're very kind to everybody. They don't judge anybody who is a beginner or an amateur. I like to think of myself as that as well. You know, I'm somebody that likes to lift others up rather than bring them down. But there is a very small minority of people who consider themselves pro photographers who look down their noses at people. I know I've experienced this in the past because I choose to use gear that's more affordable. There's some people who just completely write me off straight away. And I've got no problem with that. They're quite entitled to that. But this sort of elitism that's sort of bred into photography sometimes, I think, is actually damaging to the experience as a whole. So one word of advice, if you come across somebody like that, completely ignore them. They are absolutely in the minority. Most people will support what you are trying to do.
You see, have you ever looked up where the origin of the word amateur comes from? It comes from a Latin word, amare, I think you pronounce it. But it literally means somebody who does something for the love of it, rather than money. And if that's the definition of an amateur, then I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with being an amateur photographer. In fact, I like to think of myself as a professional amateur, somebody who gets paid to do what they love. What's a lesson to be taken away? Well, in this day and age of social media where everything is turned into a competition, I think, what's wrong with doing something for the love of it? I'll see you next time.